that anything that's kedusha shvius and you use it for human consumption, you're not allowed to use it as a salve for a person. And the Mishnah adds, "Ein tzorach loymer lebehema," and it's needless to say that you don't use it as a salve for an animal as well. And before we show over here, this is where we were holding. We went through the concept of why, because we just said that it doesn't really, when you use the tzarech fus adam, if you can't use this for a remedy for a person, for healing process of a person, kol shkein she'os l'shtamish b'hem fus behema. For sure you can't use it to heal an animal. Shkein refuah behema u'shimish pachas choshev refuah adam, because healing an animal is what you would call a lesser chashivas, a lesser type of lower level type of situation than a person. However, it's not so much that it's saying, okay, you can't use it for this, but you can use it for food. Because as we mentioned previously, not only is it for, you can't use it for a person, for an animal, for medicinal purposes, but you can't even use it to feed, meaning if it's something that's choshev by a person, he's going to eat it, you can't go ahead and give it to your dog to eat, because at the end of the day it has less of a chashivas. But we're saying that when it comes to, we were talking about medicine, so we say you don't have to even mention about an animal. But however, what happens if a chol she'ein miyuchid lebachel adam? Let's say you can't use it for food items. Ois mimenu maluglav la'adam avoloi lebehema. Now, why so? What does this mean? It's not miyuchid machal adam, and you're allowed to use it for a lugla for an adam. So he explains. Let's say you have something that could be used as fodder, but not for human consumption. Keep going. He brings down kaitzim, thorns, v'dardim rakim, or these little thistles. You can use it for a refuah. Now, why so? So he explains, because it says for you for eating. So we learn out from that pasuk, as we mentioned previously, if it was set aside as food, that type of a situation where you can use it for human consumption, it has to have the same process as food. That it's going to be for everyone. Not for refuah, because refuah technically is not going to help a person. not to what I said before, because it's going to be a late, that's on something else, a late thing, but because a person who's healthy is not going to need it. So it's not for all people. It's not across the board. We can derive from here. We can derive and infer that if it's something that can't be eaten by a person, even though technically it has a sanctity of Shviyas, because as long as it's, you can use it for something, you can't use it for across the board for people, for human beings. You can use it for something that is not across the board. Now there's an interesting grow over here, Vilna Goy, and he adds a wrinkle, and he says, even though if you have something that you're going to use as fodder, and you can use it now as a healing salve for a person, that's with the condition that when you use it for refuah, for a person, you don't spoil it that the animal will not want to eat it. But if you're going to have to create a salve, and the salve now you're going to have to use a couple of other ingredients, and it's going to become so bitter or so unedible that even an animal will not want it. You went and he says over here, you squeezed it out, created a refuah. I know it's a schita. Why would that create that it's not going to be usable? I guess maybe because if you squeeze it out, an animal won't eat it. He won't drink, but because he won't drink, and usually he eats it. Now he's not going to drink it. I know what he means by this. Also, it'll be prohibited. So according to the Vilna Gaon, if you create a circumstance where it's not edible for the animal, at the end of the day, the eating of the animal takes in a way precedence over that you're using it as for medicinal purposes for the other. So if you can go and create a medicine out of it and afterwards want to give it to the animal, it's okay. Otherwise, you got a problem. Now, we've been talking about a circumstance over here that you have some things that are edible by animals. For example, you have apples. Apples is human. You don't give it to an animal. Well, let's say you have certain items that are only used by animals, eaten by animals. We went through different types of things. Then it's for animals. What happens if you have something that is not for human consumption? You have it by Tumah Tahara as well. You have what's called Ein Roy L'Achilas Adam, and then you have Ein Roy L'Achilas Kelev. And it makes a difference if it's a Tumah Chamura or a Tumah Cow. What the Madregas are, it's Machlokes. So he brings down over here from the Chazon Ish. Machal odus from eskalka v'roi ke'es lamachal behemil bulvad. Let's say it became spoiled, no one's fault, happened to get spoiled, and now you can only give it as fodder. No one, a human being, will not take it into his mouth because it's disgusting. Nechlo rashva agroa b'dinoit. And there's a question over here how to interpret a Yerushalmi. Like many of the Mishnayos, you find in the Yerushalmi how to explain it, because the Zroyim, is only going with the Yishalmi, with the Talmud Yishalmi. L'das harash hayom mitchilik tishachala love kedusha shviyas hayimachal adam. Since it had a kedusha shviyas when it was fresh, and it can only and you're not supposed to take something that's for human consumption and use as a salve. And at that time there was a prohibition to use it as a salve. Just because now it got spoiled doesn't mean that it loses that kedusha, that now you can use it for medicinal purposes. If at the outset, when it was something that was fresh and a human being wouldn't eat it, it's something else. But also last minute full even after it's spoiled, you won't be able to. Because that issa stays on it. You might not want to eat it, but this stays. Even though right now, the Rash holds, you can't give it to a person, only to a behemoth. However, the Chazon Ish learns that the Vilna Gaon will not learn like this. This is all quotes from the Chazon Ish, that since over here, it's now at this moment in time, since it got spoiled, only Roy for Machal Behema. Dina Kamachal Behema. For all intents and purposes, we consider it like Machal Behema. It's not that it did lose Kedusha Shvius. You look at it now, and now it's only Lamachal Behema. And therefore you can use it as a salve, even though normally something that's for Machal Adam is not like that. Even according to this disagreement, as we explained by Chazon Ish, between the Rash and the Gra, l'divrei hakol, that according to everyone, Laso's spirit, he calls it. You make an alcoholic beverage, mit'einim shenifsu machilas adam, and before, from figs that now it won't be eaten, it got spoiled, and technically they're oimdim lebehema, you'll be able to go ahead and create from this a spirit. I guess in those days, this is also the Chazon Ish, in those days they used to make, you didn't use fresh figs to go ahead and create spirit. They have what was called te'ena, just like you have vodka. Vodka is made from what? From potatoes, no? No.
Wheat, potatoes, apples, beets.
Yeah, but you probably don't get the best kind unless you buy Smirnoff, right? Okay.
Only Chabad, really.
Okay, at the end of the day, if let's say you take the shvius vegetable, so you're going to say that you're going to go ahead and use it as a vodka, call it a vodka from Te'ena. Can you do it? Because technically, even according to the Vilna Gaon, you can use machal behema. Halacha will be.
It's also used for machal.
Huh?
Used for machal.
According to the Vilna Gaon, you can use for machal. But over here, you're not really using it.
Coming out.
The question is, so that's what he wants to say. That even though it's not what you call a real food item now, you're using it as a spirit, as a alcoholic beverage. I guess that's lo madrega, contrary to popular belief nowadays. And the halacha will be that we still say that you're allowed to do it, because this is better than refuah. By refuah, it's a mashkila adam. Why? Because over here it's a mashkila adam. Refuah is only a salve, so you can't take a salve and create it from apples. But according to over here, according to everybody, you'll be able to go ahead and make an alcoholic spirit out of it. Okay,
You
weiter.
use it also for refuah?
What?
Apple you use for refuah also?
Doesn't talk about refuah. No.
Because apple can use for refuah.
How can you use it for refuah?
Isn't apple for both?
You mean alcohol? You use
Yeah.
No, I don't think he means rubbing alcohol over here. No, he means a drink. He says the fishu mashkil adam. He doesn't say because it could be over refuah. He says mashkil adam.
It is mashka, but is it possible to be used for refuah at the same time?
Something that you can use as a mashka, just like you can't use a food. Technically, right? For refuah. So we're not talking about refuah here. We're talking to use it as a beverage. Okay. Now he says, what happens if you have a type of food item, v'chol she'enim yuchad loy lemachal adam, v'loy lemachal behema. It's ein roy lachilas kelef as well. It's ein roy lachilas adam, and it's ein roy lachilas kelef. And then choshev olav lemachal adam lemachal behema. You decided that you're going to go against the grain. Is the halacha, and you're going to eat it. It's noisel of chumra adam v'chumra behema. You have to give it over the chumras of both. One second. Okay. Oh, 1 second. We skipped one item. I have to fill in the blanks over here. We mentioned that if it's a machal behema, you can use it for refuah for an adam. But the Mishnah goes, what happens if it's a machal behema? Can you use it for refuah for behema? No. You can only use it as a refuah for an adam. You can't use it for a behema. And he explains, even though we say you can use it for medicinal purposes for a person, also you can't use it for an animal. It said, and we mentioned over here the behemoth and the chay that are in the field. The doshim is that shedova haroy la'achilus behema, something that it can be eaten by an animal. Yir rak le'echol behema. What's after ti called also le'echol? To tell you that when it comes to the fodder, you have to use it as fodder. Avoloy lasis men rufula behema. So basically, when you go down the madrega, that's for an adam, since it's down anyway, legav behema. So we say it's like equal. Over here, there's a gzeiros hakosim that to use it for medicinal purposes for an animal will not be allowed. Even though we already use this. How many times can you use it? You have twice the pasuk of le'echol. You have it in pasuk vav, and then you have pasuk zayin. Okay, since in order we don't want to have a contradiction in psukim, so over here we're only talking vis-a-vis the behema, and not vis-a-vis the adam. And that's how the Yishalmi explains it. Now, there's one extra bar here. We're talking about two things here. We're talking about machol, and we're talking about refuah. What about for other purposes? What's the status? So we have to know that machal behema shel shviyis nesel loyrak b'shima shel refuah lebehema doesn't mean only for this purpose it's not allowed. Ela oslas b'shum shimish l'tzarach behema. Any type of a shimish. What does that mean? What will be different than medicinal? Why should we think it's different? I feel a shimish and nosen doimel achila. Even if it is like achila. Chutz ma'achila mamish. With the exception of eating. Eating, you can give for fodder for an animal if that's who eats it. Shekei omer b'yishalmi shein oisim tzvoyim lebehema. It says in Yishalmi, for example, we had that third category of making dyes. That we said dyes are like achila. So it says you can't dye items for an animal. The hainu tzvay is gufa behema kvisha regilam lasis b'meihem. They used to sometimes dye an animal a different color. They dyed it purple, for whatever reason. Or you had an item, a bit of an animal, or a nice piece of cloth, jewelry, and you want to dye it, you can't use that as well. If it's memachal behema kodesh v'kedusha shviyis, if the animal could eat it as fodder, you're not allowed to use that as a dye. Af al pishin tzviyahi hano hadoimel achila. Even though we mentioned previously that tzviya is the same thing because the hano happens at the time that it goes into the garment. And we said when it comes to a person you could. What's the distinction between an adam that we say it's allowed and a behema we say it's no go? Because that's called, he says, a shimish kosher. We say it has a kedusha shviyis. But dyeing things for an animal, it's only secondary. And the shimish kosher, it's not considered enough to say, okay, you can use it for tzviyah. Because technically, if you have something that is only used for dyeing animal type of gadgets, and that would be the nafkamina. That over here it's not going to have a kedusha shviyis. So even though when it comes to an adam and it's machal adam, we say you're going to have enough from it straight away. It's like machal, and we can go ahead and use it for dyeing. Fine. That's because it's a choshev de kazach. You can use it for a human being. However, when it comes to a behema, it doesn't get a kedusha shviyis on account that you can go ahead and use it for dyes for items that an animal has. Why? Why do you dye them? For an animal or for a person? I guess there are certain type of colors or whatever you want to use for a human being. It's not like nowadays when everybody goes ahead and gets polka dotted as well. It doesn't work that way. And that'll be the chilik over here. And that's why we say that because you can't go ahead and use dyes for an animal only if exclusively for dyes. We'll stop over here.